All right, we should be good.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ISD 191 Policy Review Committee. So good evening to those who may be watching us on YouTube. And so we will begin our meeting. We will start with the review of policies. We have an annual review for Policy 806, Emergency Operations Policy, with Lisa Ryder.
And would you like me to display the policy as I speak about it?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Can you give me sharing rates, please? And you should be seeing the screen now that shows 806, emergency operations. Perfect. So as you take a look at this one, this particular policy is one which, as has been mentioned, comes up in periodic review on an annual basis. And the 806, as we review this, is it outlines our emergency operations our plan and policy. And the elements that you see listed in this policy have not changed for us. Therefore, we actually have no adjustments to the policy. It's made available to you for review in case there's something that we're not catching that you feel needs to be adjusted.
Great, thank you. Scott and Darcy, do you have any comments or thoughts on this policy as an annual review?
I had nothing for this policy.
Same here.
Great. I did not either, so thank you.
Okay.
So then we move this just as do we have to move to approve any of this again as a part of the annual review, or are we just reviewing it?
That should go to the consent agenda, I think.
She'll go to the consent. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next policy with some changes is, and we have looked at this before. It was we did have a first reading almost a year ago in January on visitors to school buildings and sites, policy number 903, and that is with Aaron Tinklenberg.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know that there are any changes. I think there was just some confusion about whether this needed to be brought back, but it was approved. It did go through a first reading January 9th and was approved at that time. But it's been so long now since that happened, I think just wanted to bring it back to the committee's attention and make sure it was ready to go. But no changes from that reading on January 9th.
Darcy, Scott, do you have any additions or thoughts or changes after now that we had it kind of sitting in a first review?
The only comments I have about this are should we have some cross references then to like school conduct, things like that. So because that's really what this, we've seen this several times in the course of my time on the board here, and so but that's the only thing I can see that would be I think important additions to this.
Did you have anything, Scott, to add or thoughts?
I do not have anything to add. Nope.
Okay.
So adding that cross-reference then, and then bring it back, it could go on consent agenda.
Yep. Thank
Okay.
you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, our next policy is a new policy, policy 634, electronic technologies acceptable use policy. And also attached to that is policy 524, internet acceptable use and safety policy, which Lisa can explain more, but I'm thinking is 634 replacing that one?
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay. So what you should see on your screen is a mapping of policy 524 to the newly recommended policy 634. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
Perfect. So what we tried to do is we took a look at 524 and realized that it really was focused more towards the acceptable use related to our students only. And yet we found that there was a policy out there in a neighboring district that had more of a broader approach, one that actually addressed both staff and students all at once. And so we started to explore that and began to kind of map out where is it that the purposes are, covered in both and what's different about them. And so this document that you're seeing on the screen here, I believe has been added to the agenda now. And it's available, but I wanted to start here just so you could kind of understand that what we are recommending is that we eliminate 524, our current internet acceptable use and safety policy, and we replace it instead with policy 634, electronic technologies acceptable use. And you can see there's a slight change in terminology. Essentially, there's quite a bit in 634 that has been updated to be more current. And as well, like I mentioned, it's encompassing both staff and students. So Rachel Gorton and Aaron Tinklenberg have worked with me on this, as well as previously Don Leak, with regard to what needed to be included, what needed to be adjusted. I believe in your copy, you will see the changes that we suggested under 634, as it isn't not exactly what you'd see coming from MSBA Direct. It came from another district as an example, but you can also then see kind of the parallels here between the two policies. So whether you're looking at one policy next to the other with all the print, or if you're looking at this mapping document, we just wanted to kind of be able to show kind of what was and where you can find it now in the new policy. So with that, I would like to pause and let the others discuss certain areas as we go through this. And I'm not the expert on this by any means. And Aaron and Rachel know far more about the details of this as we go through it. So I'm going to take down the mapping document and instead pull up the policy then and go from there. So now you should see policy 634, electronic technologies acceptable use. Not a lot changing here on the purpose, general statement of policy, educational use, or the guideline first paragraph A on page 1.
Lisa, can you zoom in just a little bit on it?
Sure, thank you. Hard for me to know what you guys are all seeing. A little more? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. So is there anything on this page that we want to pause on?
I have quite a few comments overall, and so I'm not sure if how you want to handle that, Leslie. If you want to have them talk through it first and then come back to the questions, maybe.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk through it all first, and then come back with questions. I think will be good.
So we'll just going on to page 2. There's not a whole lot changing here under the acceptable use of electronic technologies and district network from that which was 634 in the other district. As we compare it to our own, we found there are a lot of similarities going through here. Moving on to page 3 here. Again, not seeing much. Just want to capture anything. So you do see we did change throughout the document Director of Media and Technology Services to be Director of Technology. That's page 4. Changing in terminology of what the policy is called. And now that we have experienced something totally different here under students, students have access to internet resources while on district property. No longer really the case. It's period. Next page. Guest access internet use. Cleaning up a little bit of this language. So it's not so specific and maybe outdated. Employees. Okay, as we talked about this page here, under number 8, electronic mail it's recommended that it contain a confidentiality notice. So we reached out to our legal support to inquire as to, does this really work? Is this necessary? And the response that we heard was that this notice can be helpful if there is an issue. And so it's recommended that we do that. We have not yet. We're just waiting for a little lull, a little bit of a lull to be able to make that happen system-wide. Moving on to the next, oops, sorry, let me back that up. Here we go. Next page, just some changes to director. Not much else there. Okay, then classroom and teacher web content. Just some adjustments here with regard to, so much has changed over the last few years with regard to, is it a web page or is it something else that we're talking about? Is it a website? And so, what is required? What is okay to offer? And maybe Rachel will want to speak to that a little bit more. Moving on. Okay, we'll come back with questions then. One thought that we have around district activity and its web content is that, having links to other outside entities may be a possibility, but their content shouldn't be necessarily on our website pages. And then as we talked about the filter, our filtering system is following the Child Internet Protection Act. What that means changes on a regular basis as things change. So we don't know that a policy should necessarily be too restrictive, but this is an area where in the past, our policy has been a bit more descriptive than what you're seeing here. So we may want to have some dialogue around that if you have questions or concerns. There's a lot that's not stated here that maybe, you may choose to call out. I just don't, it's kind of like, where do you draw the line then? So. We didn't know that was.
I can jump in a little bit with the filters. That we changed the language to really follow CIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act. That doesn't stop us from filtering at higher levels, but there are legal limits that we have to filter at. And so this policy is aligned with those. And those are those 3 things that you see here under filter: the obscene child pornography or harmful to minors. And harmful to minors is the one where there's really a lot of kind of ambiguity in what it means.
Okay, then we've got under liability. We just didn't know how appropriate this was with regard to an indemnity clause of Facebook's statement of rights. Facebook's just one thing. It's not. There's so many. So why we call that out? And then we get to our implementation, policy review, and legal references, along with then cross-references that are listed. Attached then next in your policy book is going to be, I'm sorry, I'm missing the Appendix 1. Appendix 1 talks about online code of ethics. So this isn't policy necessarily, but it is an example of the online code of ethics that we endeavor. And then following that, you will see a appendix for personal device access. And so this is, individual's personal item or device, and what does that mean then? following this then is the 524, which this is the policy we currently have in place that we would be looking to rescind. So I will back up and we'll take your questions if you want. Questions?
Go ahead, Darcy or Scott, start us off.
Okay.
I would refer to Darcy.
Okay. I have a few. I know it's a shock to everyone. Okay. Okay. So first, I first read through this, and and it's kind of nice to read through them kind of cold, because then you're really reading them as a member of the community would be reading them, and I immediately got a little bit hung up with Roman numeral number 1, which was that this applies to both district technology as well as personal technology. And so, and only hung up because there's not really a definitions of this about what those two things are. And so I don't know if a definition section is helpful, because some of these things, and I'll talk more about where I see some conflicts, later in the policy, but there's some places where in the policy where it's difficult, I think, for us to call out the same guidelines for district technology as there is for personal technology. And so I don't know if that's a definitions or something here, but so just maybe just kind of keep that in the back of your head as I go through these other ones. So then Roman numeral 3, we talk about you can only have to have express permission to, it's in the first paragraph of Roman numeral 3 there, or I guess with express permission. And so how does that apply to somebody who sits in the parking lot and uses the Wi-Fi? Because it's not express permission.
Well,
Is it?
but this says this is for the use of district electronic resources. So
Is it
using the Wi-Fi. Got it. Okay.
Wi-Fi is a resource. So
Yep,
I guess
right.
a bigger question maybe then is Wi-Fi a resource for the purposes of this policy? And if so, that changes some other things within here as well.
Yeah, I would say that the express permission would be, because we do have Wi-Fi that extends out into our parking lots, and that is a district that is incorporated into this acceptable use policy. That express permission, I think, allows us some flexibility, that if we find that there is a situation where the system is being misused, that we have a course of action. So we may post and we may share out that our buildings, right, our students and even community can come and sit in the parking lot and use our Wi-Fi. Certainly that's something right now that we're encouraging if it's needed and things like that. But having this express permission, I think does allow us an avenue to say that there might be situations where they would not be granted permission to use our system.
Okay, so they're not, if I as a community person go to the parking lot and sign into the Wi-Fi, is there something saying that you are using by logging into the public Wi-Fi, we are giving you our express permission to use this district resource kind of thing?
At this time, there is nothing on our public Wi-Fi that kind of says. Sometimes if you go to if you go to a library, if you go to,
yeah, right.
Yeah, you have to kind of accept that. Right now, we do not have anything like that on our system.
I was wondering about that.
So, because then if we do, then that's certainly the express permission piece of it. Then we are for sure like granting somebody permission to use it. Otherwise, we don't really have, it doesn't seem to me like it falls under express permission to just have it open. And so you can kind of, I guess, think about how that, I don't want to spend a ton of time on that, but it doesn't feel to be like express permission if it's just open without any I agree little, or even notifications or something you have to read or something that scrolls by. So the second paragraph of Roman numeral 3 is use as a privilege and not a right. And I understand that the purpose behind that about being like, as you said, Rachel, is like revoking, being able to revoke that. I'm concerned that it has language that language particularly maybe an equity concern, and also we have of course now some access by kind of necessity for it, and so like we have students that have to access, because we're learning virtually, they have to use our district resources to access it, and so that kind of moves it from the privilege to the right piece of it for me. So maybe just adding language about under circumstances where people, students and faculty, students and staff need the technology in order to perform their jobs, so that we'd have to rework that privilege and right language a little bit. And we don't want to seem like if we are restricting access to it, that we are doing so in an equitable way, I guess, which again, just the language of privilege and right can be misconstrued. I got a bunch more, so I'm just gonna keep going. You guys can take take what I say for.
But for one moment, I'm not sure I'm capturing what it is that the suggestion is then for that. Is it to remove the paragraph?
I'm suggesting that we should not say it's a privilege and not a right only because of from an equity standpoint. If we remove it because it could be misconstrued as restricting access from an equity standpoint, even though we would never do that, of course, we have to be, I think we should be thoughtful about what that says. And so I think just even if we rework this to say use of district technologies can be revoked because of misuse, and will be supplied to all students and staff who require it for furtherance of educational work or whatever sort of thing. Because right now lots of people need our technology, so because they're at home and working offsite, things like that. So
I don't mean to interrupt, but I wonder if that sentence is necessary at all.
Okay. So yeah. So you see, I mean, you guys would rephrase it how you like, but as long as I'm communicating well what my concerns with it are. So
yeah, I think I've seen this privilege not right has been a consistent language that's been in acceptable use policies for a long time. I think so much has changed in the last 6 months, 7 months, but even before that, we really were having conversations about that access to the technology resources there was a tipping point at some point, probably within the last couple of years here, of where it became a necessity, and certainly within the last 6 months with the pandemic, it has become even that much more. I think the piece with the privilege not a right is that it keeps the understanding that that we choose what systems to put in place and what level to provide. So I don't know if there's any detriment to taking it out or reworking it in that. But it's interesting because that language specifically is in every AUP that I've seen out there. So
yeah, I'm sure it is. I mean, it makes sense as a standard language for the purpose of making sure users are clear that they can lose privileges because of misuse. But it's a pretty broad statement, and it's not actually even something we could take away at this point. I mean, kid needs the Chromebook, for accessing class from home, so so as long as this is our first run through, through this. And so as long as you can kind of see where my concerns lie with that, you can rework it as you see fit, as it accomplishes both the purpose that you need it for and to make it inclusive and accurate language, I guess. Okay, so for B, let's see, is it right? Okay, yeah, for B, district reserves the right to monitor, read, copy using the district's electronic intelligence inclusions network. So again, I'm confused about how this fits in with someone using, does this apply to somebody sitting in the parking lot of the school and using the Wi-Fi? Or is this referring to things on the actual network?
This would be referring to things on the actual network, although if somebody was in the parking lot and searching for things that we blocked,
yep,
we would be able to see that.
Okay, so okay, so I guess it was a little confusing to me reading this. I wasn't clear. It says using the district's technologies, including its network. And so I just was unclear about, as a private citizen, could you see what I was searching if I was using the school's Wi-Fi sort of thing. And so, I'm not sure if I'm using my personal device and using the school's network, I'm not sure what privacy issues there are or are not with that. If I'm not using any other district resources other than just the Wi-Fi. And so I'm not sure if there's a privacy issue there or not. So just something that caught my eye.
So I wonder, Rachel, if an individual uses their private device on our guest Wi-Fi, they're still subject to our filtering system.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
so if they were to be on their individual device and they were trying to access things that were, hitting up against our blockage, we would know what they were trying to access. And so just to make sure that everyone's clear, we reserve that right to monitor that.
Yep. That sounds yeah, totally fine. As long it was really just the question. I wasn't clear about how that affected Wi-Fi. So
good. Okay.
Yep. And so for one up. So I have this is a question I have of use of personal devices as opposed to district devices. And so there are use of personal devices subject to all the policies and guidelines, plus state and federal laws related to internet use and computer copyright laws. That's certainly true. And we talk a little bit. Okay, so let's actually go down to 5A then. Thinking about this paragraph, but go down to 5A. So this says this is what you can and cannot do using either a district device or your personal device on using the district technology, Wi-Fi and network. And for 5, this is A5, orders for shopping online. And so does this actually say that I can't use my personal phone to do any sort of I don't know why shopping online is called out, but anyway, I can't order anything from Amazon using my personal phone first question. Does work time include, when it says work time, does that include my break time? Or does that just work hours? That's my first question, because that matters for the second question.
Yeah, I would not interpret, if it's my break, I'm on my break. And I wouldn't interpret that to be necessarily work time.
Okay, so that is, so that was unclear to me reading this, if that meant if break time, because did it mean my work hours that I'm on the building, or does that include my break time or not? So we may want to just specify that in here. I'm under 5 that it does not include break time. And so then if I'm on my break, is this A5 saying I'm on my break, I can't use my personal phone to order anything from Amazon? Is that what this is saying?
That is what this is saying. Yep.
And okay. And so could I, what if I want to register my kid for soccer, co-rec soccer online instead of order something from Amazon? Can I do that?
If you go up to A where it says users will not use electronic technologies to create, I think one of what I'm hearing you say, Darcy, is that delineation, because if I have my personal phone in a district building and I'm on my own cell plan,
Yep.
Is there a difference than if I'm on the district Wi-Fi?
Right.
Yeah. And kind of delineating, so the language being a little bit more precise in here.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way. There's a couple sections through here where it seems a little muddled between what I could do with my own personal cell phone on my personal cell plan during my break while I'm on district property, or outside my school. I leave the building at 4. I'm on my phone to order something to, on my own cell phone. I'm still on school property, so technically using, the Wi-Fi, I guess, or no, still on school property using my, so there's a couple of places in here where if it doesn't really apply to both the personal cell phone plan and personal use items, that we have to delineate it from the school ones. So this makes total sense for A5, and again, I'm not clear why shopping is like specific, I'm assuming that means like you shouldn't be online, with any school stuff, doing any sort of personal type work, right? Or any personal errands and things like that, not just shopping.
Yeah, I think later on too, we call out the fact that the district is not liable for any purchases made on personal. So there's a financial liability there that I think this is alluding to as well.
Okay, so my first piece, and so thank you for clarifying that, Rachel. That's helpful. So I think A5 should have 2 things. One, specify that break time is not, this doesn't include break time, and secondly, that we should pull out of the first paragraph that this is pull the personal device piece out of this section, so that it's clear that what we mean is you can't use personal, you can't use district computer, district phone, district resources to do this list of things.
Would it make sense simply to add the word in 5A, users will not use district electronic technologies?
Yep. But but you also, above that in the paragraph, it says on off district property and or personal electronic technologies on district property. And so this is including personal devices as well.
Right, but if we were to say and or personal electronic technologies connected to district resources.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, however you want to kind of massage this, but it seems like I can't use my personal, the way this is written and the way I read it is I can't use my personal phone on my cell plan at any point while I'm on school property to make appointments, to order something from Amazon, to do DoorDash for my way home, kind of thing. And so if what we mean is district resources, then we have to be specific on what we mean by that in these sections, as opposed to what you can do with your personal phone and your personal things on school property.
Yeah, I think it would help having that definition. So like if we're referring to like district, electronic technologies, what does that definition mean? Or in terms of, personal electronic technologies, it's referring to personal electronic technologies that are connected to the district networks or Wi-Fi, something that makes that a little more specific. And then adding on to Darcy's question on A5 is, because that's like referring to staff. Is there also something related to like, students shouldn't be like online shopping during, class time or something, because we have like, should be like work class / class time, would they have the same permissions on their personal phones and their cell phone plan to, shop during lunch hour,
Well,
Right,
let's take something like, can an individual, is it the intent that the individual can or cannot listen to music streamed on their phone through the district's Wi-Fi?
right. And even like 6, is this saying that I can't store personal photos on my personal device? Because this section is talking about district and personal guidelines. So I think 6 means storage of personal photos, things like that on your district device. But since we include personal devices in this section as well, 6 is saying I can't store personal photos on my personal phone.
So is it better to remove the personal electronic technologies from this policy?
I think it has to be on here. I think personal devices definitely have to be in here somewhere, but they perhaps could be there. Maybe they could be their own section saying that, is if you are using your personal device, using the district network, Wi-Fi, that sort of thing, then these things are your guidelines, these unacceptable uses and things like that.
So
that's
maybe,
intent, right?
maybe instead of users will not use electronic technologies, have it broken into 2 sections. Is that what you're suggesting? Where one is users will not use district-owned electronic technologies, and the other is will not use their personal electronic devices while connected to the school's network or to the school's Wi-Fi.
Something.
If you're using your personal, you can't do these things.
Yeah, because there's a lot fewer things that you can't do with your personal device than you can't do with your district devices.
Right.
And so that's why it's a smaller section, and it still has the same guidelines. I'm not at all suggesting the guidelines should be different, but in order for people to really understand what I cannot do with my personal device with school resources. So I think we have with some of this, we would run into we may run into some issues with some of our bargaining units as well, with the way this is written and what they could do with their break time and their personal items.
Hello, where's Dad?
So that's all. Maybe a shorter, separate section of the personal use pieces.
Yeah, and I feel like those situations that if somebody is using a personal device, not using our network, so they're using their own cell plan, and let's say accessing something that's in 1, 2, 3, or 4 under A.
Yep.
That really is outside of the electronic technologies policy. Those are other policies that kick in at that point.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't in any way want to limit the intent of any of this, or the enforcement of it or anything else. It's just confusing. It was confusing to me reading it from a staff perspective, whatever, like where I could or could not use my devices. And Leslie has a good question about it. that where it says, we want to make sure that the language is used is for both employee and student perspective, because students aren't going to have work time under like 5, for example. So, okay, I have a couple more. Sorry, I'm going to apologize in advance for the rest of these I have, or for so many of them. Okay, so B is okay, no, I'm gonna skip it, doesn't matter. Okay, so 5D, D is in David, D is in Darcy. So again, I think talks about a personal device. So D is kind of, again, an area where it looks like it crosses over into we can't enforce people using their personal phone, using their own cell phones on school property for political campaigning. So where just another area where it seems helpful that we have a separate section for personal devices. 5I is, let's see, 5I is the users will not repost or resend a message that was sent to the user privately without the permission of the person who sent the message. This is an interesting one. I forward stuff all the time without asking permission from the person who sent it to me, in all sorts of situations. And I get that, so, I mean, the way that this reads is that Aaron sends me a message about something, and because I don't know the answer, I forward it on to, Abigail for the answer. And so this says I have to ask Aaron permission to forward the email to Abigail. We use am I reading this correctly?
I think you're reading it correctly. It's interesting, like that whole, like, having different perspectives, because the intent of this was more about, and this is where you kind of, those two worlds of the student and staff kind of come together, is the intent that students are not going to be forwarding. But I totally see what you're saying on this one. I think how it's written is needs clarification.
Okay, great. Yeah, because it did. Yeah, I was like, wow, I've been violating this for years now. So in all sorts of situations.
And usually the sender will have a disclaimer on it, or they can lock it so you can't forward it.
Right, but there's so many.
So we have to clarify that, because I think many of us just forward unless they have that disclaimer saying do not forward or copy.
Right.
So
Yes.
Good point.
Yeah. So yeah, and there's just, so just to clarify the intent behind it, I guess, or the circumstances. So it looks like 5N, as in Nancy, looks to be another perhaps 5N. So we'll scroll up a smidge there. So again, simply because we have the personal and district technology together in this one, this is probably, and looks like another area where personal could happen. Even though the intent, of course, is to be the district resources. And then this is my favorite. About the drones. This is my favorite one here. So, okay. So what I have, so if Project Lead the Way makes some drones with a kit, they need the permission of all of these people. There's at least 3 people, maybe 4 people in here before they can test their drone.
Yeah, so this was an interesting one that came over from the other district, and we had quite a bit of conversation about this one. And Lisa and Aaron, jump in if I'm forgetting something, but this would be a blanket kind of permission for like Project Lead the Way or for communications or whoever it is, right? That is kind of a defined use of the drones. Where we decided to leave it in was because there are FAA regulations that connect in with drone flying, particularly because we are not very far from an airport. And so it's one of those that it's a technology, but it sits so far outside of what we generally consider, the district technologies that it was an interesting addition from a different district, and we felt it was worth discussion.
I would love to see the story behind why this is in somebody's policy. I would love to hear that. So, I would do a couple things here. One would be to maybe add some sort of language about unless in the course of curriculum, kind of like so that it's already part of the curriculum. So Project Lead the Way can make a drone and test it in the field without having to get or even put building principal, fine, but to have to get all of those permissions to test the drone that they did in class seems a little bit much, as much as I'm sure you'd enjoy getting that question.
I'm sorry again, but am I reading it wrong? Or it does say or building principal. So yeah. I don't read it as saying all of them.
Oh, I read it as properties and transportation or building principal. So there's 3 people. So if we had an Oxford comma right there at the end of properties and transportation.
Yeah, and actually that's properties and transportation is 1 person.
Yeah, so this looks like Director of Technology, Director of Operations at Properties and Transportation.
Yeah, David Lake's title is Director of Operations, Properties and Transportation.
That was okay. Yeah. Okay, so you have to get the permission of one of these people, or okay, so maybe a little clarification around that. You just have to get permission of one of these people somehow. Aaron, want to word that?
That's a good clarification, because I had assumed, like you, that you needed all 3.
Okay, good. Thank you, Scott, for reading this. Yeah. Okay, so then, and then what? We have a couple drones at our house, as befitting a nerd family, and so we can't, saying that according to this policy, then we need to contact in the summertime. We need to get people's permission to fly our drone on school property and get these whoever's permission we need. Is that correct?
As it's written right now, that is correct. Yeah. And the purpose that it was in there is a liability. That's the purpose.
Okay, sure. Okay. It is an interesting addition to this policy, because it felt completely on kind of left field, because if I'm looking for drone permission, I'm not sure if technology is like where I'd go, but again, I'd really love to hear the story. Okay, so yeah, I'm fine if it's clear about whose permission you have to get for this, that it's one of those 3 people. Or group 2 of the 3, or whatever it's actually supposed to be. Okay, almost done here. 6, user notification. Okay, so actually Rachel already answered this. We don't have, my question was about sitting in the parking lot using Wi-Fi, and Rachel, you already said we don't have any notification about that. So we've already covered that. 9, Roman numeral 9, A5. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so this for this section, what do we do about students that are over 18, emancipated, homeless? How are those communications done for this section? So essentially for kids who maybe don't have a guardian, parent or guardian.
Are you asking about notification about this policy generally, or?
Well, it said, yeah, so this is the notification section of this policy, right? And so if they don't have a guardian or are emancipated, that sort of thing, like, because if they're emancipated, then information has to go to the student rather than to the parent.
Maybe looking at the wrong section. Which area are you looking at again?
9A5. This is notification, right? Am I in the wrong section?
Number 9 is employees. 9A5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
9 is employees.
This is when an employee is sending an email to a student's parent or guardian.
Right. And so, right. So can we, I guess, if we have emancipated students, no information should be going to their parent anyway. I guess all I'm looking for is, do we have a process if we have, for this, that the information can go to the student rather than to the parent?
The notification is generally sent through via the student handbook. So those go directly to students and are made available for parents as well.
Okay. Okay.
It would be okay though for an employee to send an email direct to an emancipated student with this information. So this is only a concern or an issue if we're talking about sending the information to a parent or guardian, correct?
Right. And so I guess I don't see in here any guidelines about about when we have an emancipated student, when that the information should go directly to them. And I'm not trying to create, and maybe I'm creating a solution or a question about it, a thing that's not actually a problem. That has definitely been a thing in the past, but I didn't see anything in here about communications to students where the parents or guardians are not involved, where they're emancipated in some way. So
Yeah. Darcy, when I'm looking at 5, the A, B, C, and D there, the intent of this section is really to define the security of student data through email and phone calls, and what should and should not be shared across those avenues. I think it's interesting, like that point that you're when we think about all emails to a student's parents or guardians, or theoretically even to a student in some situation, right? Is that email is inherently insecure.
right.
And so student data should not be shared through that avenue.
So maybe the solution is to be more inclusive in number 5 to say all emails to students, parents, or guardians about a student or an emancipated student directly must adhere to the following precautions.
Yeah, I just didn't. Yeah, that would certainly work. I just didn't see any language in here about how we deal with a student with whom we communicate directly, instead of through the parents. And I don't know if we have. I'm sure there's not very many of those situations, but we also want to be. We must, by the letter of the law for an emancipated student, we have to, they're the, our legal relationship is with them, with that student, as opposed to that student's parents or guardians at that point.
But with the pandemic, I know my son is getting emails from his teachers. So couldn't it just say all emails to a student, student's parents or guardians about or the student must adhere to the following precautions?
Oh, I
All
guess students get
emails.
emails. I guess students get emails all the time, don't they? Yeah. Yeah. So the purpose of this is to define, as you say, Rachel, the guidelines about privacy. Then we should make sure that it is students, that students are included in this list of recipients. That's a great point. I didn't even think about that. Okay, and then I have one last one, 10F. And Lisa, you alluded to this earlier when you were reviewing this about external, so web content and external sites. So we have many in our athletics and activities pages. In fact, I looked at it last night yesterday, just to make sure that I was remembering correctly, but we have lots of links on our site that link to other sites, like the robotics is a good example. The robotics team has their own set of websites that are linked from our pages. Youth and Government links to YMCA, things like that. And so I was unclear what section here, and I think this is F, where this is referring to with approval of the building principal, board approved activity may establish a web page. So robotics, yep. Building principal will oversee the content of those web pages. Yeah, that's not really happening. I would be super impressed if Dave knew it was on the content of all those external pages. And so this is more like if this isn't practical for that to happen, then we should have other language around it, I guess.
So if I think about the activities that we may have and their need for a web page, there's an advisor for every activity. And I would view that as being a designee under number 3. And I would expect that maybe Dave doesn't know what the content is, but that there is, if it's on our web page and it's for a school board approved district activity, then somebody needs to be aware of what's on that page.
Okay.
I think that's a good point, but then I think the language maybe should say the building principal or his or her designee instead of and, because
Thank you. Yep,
and
that's your
would
point.
imply that both of them. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because the other position is our activities director and his support staff or her, the changes.
Right. And
So it has to be done. So we just need to have the procedures and who's the designee and really shore up the procedures for that.
Right. And so certainly certainly I agree, Lisa, that the advisor would know what the webpage, looks like. And so I think that the question though, then for number 3 is, as you're saying that, Teresa, are we reading building principal and his or her designee to be either the advisor or to be the activities or athletics director, or all 3 of them? I guess so somehow we want to make this practical, because again, like the youth and government link, that goes to the YMCA website and we have no control over that whatsoever. And so is it a matter of overseeing the contents or just being aware of it, or what exactly are they doing with this? Because then there's the booster clubs, have their own links. We have links that go out to the Burnsville athletic groups, things like that, the community groups. And so however we want it, I agree that it's certainly a necessity for us to be aware and understand what those links are, but what's practical for us to be able to oversee and actually be aware of on an ongoing basis.
I think I could see maybe being clearer about that these are only, school board approved or district pages. So for instance, for pages for those activities. So for instance, like you said, the YMCA, youth and government, I don't know if that qualifies as a school board approved activity. It's an activity that our students participate in, but it's a YMCA activity. I guess Lisa might know what that falls under, but the boosters, again, not necessarily our activity.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too, because Minnesota State High School League, we have links to that and we don't control anything on their website, but we're a member. So I would like to have a conversation about distinguishing that. So if you're a member, and just like youth and government, that's a YMCA program.
Right, exactly. But it is listed on the activities page of the high school website. And so, which are lots of external pages are.
Yeah, exactly. We link to a lot of places, and I think we're not going to necessarily want to be responsible for all of them, of course. And so maybe just making that clear that really we're responsible for our stuff only, not necessarily just things that are on the ISD191.org webpage, but things that involve district approved activities. So the robotics pages aren't our web pages, but they are our activities.
Right, and so it's really hard for a user to tell what the distinction between those links. And so I nominate Aaron to just take full control of all of those pages and what they contain, and
the building
be
principal
responsible
gets the name and designee, actually. So
so you can see that, the concern there, that, the issue of like all those links or whatever. And so whatever you choose to do with them, but whatever is in here has to be, we have to be actively doing whatever we say we are doing for this policy, so if we say we're overseeing them, then somebody has to be overseeing them, actually. So. Okay, that's all I have.
Scott, do you have other things to add or have questions on?
I have 4 pages of, no, I'm kidding. I don't have anything additional.
I think Darcy hit on a lot of the questions that I was had, and I probably articulated them better than I did. So
Indeed.
I don't have any additional either. I am thinking, though, with some of the changes or the clarification, if we're adding in definitions and things, I think that we should probably bring this back to us to kind of just have one more review before it goes out for first read. What do you think, Darcy and Scott?
I agree.
Is this, so it depends on, well, I think it should come back for another read, again, because it will read differently, based on some of the changes that staff makes. But if it comes back in January, then that would be my recommendation. You bring it back in January so that I do not have any other further comments, or I'm not allowed to make any further comments on this.
No, I don't know. Would it come back in January, or can we get Darcy on in December?
But thanks for all the work on this. I know putting together new policy is a boatload of work, but this is a really, really important one, and I appreciate all the work that you've put into this. And don't take all of my extensive note-taking and comments with anything other than my enthusiasm for the policy committee.
So if I might summarize, I'm hearing that the committee is comfortable with a 634 policy that encompasses employees and students combined. We just need to be clearer about some of these areas, and that this accepting of this policy in the future would then also lead to rescinding the 524.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. I think, are we okay to adjourn our meeting? I think we have what we're going to do with the 2 previous policies, and knowing that this one will come back for one more read before we move it to the board for a first read.
I just have a clarification, Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
903, we're going to make the revisions, then bring it back to the committee, or move it on to second reading?
903. Oh, the second. I thought that.
I
Hold
think
on.
the
I
plan
think
for
we
that
had
one
to
was-
get to 903.
Yeah, there
there's
was
one cross-reference that we'll add, and then that was
cross-reference
for a second reading at the
Okay.
board level.
That's
Yeah.
all. Thank you.
Oh, Darcy, you're muted. We didn't hear you.
Change, wouldn't require.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. We will see most of you, or all of you, on on Thursday at our regular school board meeting. So we are adjourned.